adventures.
Okay, welcome everyone to Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. I got a special treat for you today. I'm joined by NYPrepper. I met him through Chuck from Alaska Ballistics. Chuck is much better at networking than I am. Chuck is also into prepping and stuff, and I'm into it a little bit, but I'd really like to get into it a whole lot more. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked your channel. I especially thought it was cool how you were talking about the whole Ukrainian invasion and stuff like that before it happened. And then
Mhm.
I remember the day it happened, you were kind of live streaming and talking about it. So you're kind of plugged into not only survival and prepping, but a lot of kind of the economic possible collapse and world events and that kind of thing. I would say, is that fair?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of part of prepping is being aware of what's going on around the world, because you got to know what the
Mhm.
threats are. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of my channel for sure.
I think it's ironic that once the pandemic happened, people uh, globally, nationally started saying, "Oh man, maybe these preppers were onto something," because suddenly we had a shortage of food, water. People, the crime went up, and people
Yep.
realized that this kind of security is needed. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody wanted to build a backyard garden and then you had the ammo and gun shortages, which I'm sure you experienced that. People were panic
yeah,
buying. And that was much worse than the panic buying during, was it 2012 during the Obama
yeah,
reelection? There was a huge panic buy, but, I mean, that was like nothing compared to COVID. So,
right.
yeah. Yeah, it's
So that
crazy.
in some senses, man, it makes a lot of sense. And I wish I had done more prepping. Me and Chuck do have kind of a prepping plan that if, stuff goes down, I'm gonna pack up my stuff and head to his compound out of town. Uh, but he has like a special diet. He can do like normal gluten and food makes him really sick. So he made me buy like big bags of rice. He's like, if you come out, bring all your guns and ammo, but you have to bring a bunch of rice because that's all I can eat. That was
Yeah.
like his stipulation. So
Yeah, he told me the same thing. He said that he's got, like, very strict diet and yeah.
no.
That's not the
So I've
worst
got
plan, I
some.
mean.
Right. I need to do he's gonna show me the trick of I don't know if you've done it before, but taking one of those huge bags of rice and putting it in a bucket and like taking the air out of it. I want to do that, but I've got like some those huge bags of rice in the freezer, and I know that
Yep.
helps keep it a little longer too.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, you could definitely do that. You use the Mylar bags, you put an oxygen absorber in there and you just, suck it out and suck the air
Okay.
out and then you like vacuum seal it basically. And that'll last a while. I just buy freeze dried food. That's like what I have for a lot of my long-term
Mhm.
storage. That stuff will last
Okay.
like 20 to 25 years.
Oh
So
wow.
that's yeah, yeah, and some of it's not super expensive, depending on what
Mhm.
kind you get, but, you can get, like, probably a 1 or 2 months supply of emergency food for, like, $1,000 if you really, like,
Mhm.
you know, try to have, like, a balanced diet, and you buy it's not just, like, rice and chicken or something, but you get other stuff too.
Right.
So
Here in Alaska, we are already kind of set up for prepping in some ways because we only have the barges that bring vegetables and fruits up here and many of our food, but people, especially in the rural communities, rely on hunting and fishing
yep.
for much of their diet throughout the year, and they've learned to store that. And in some ways, I've done that too. This last year wasn't that good, but a few years ago, I got my spring bear, I got my caribou, I got my deer, I got a whole bunch of halibut and fish, and I was able to
Mhm.
just fill the freezer up. And it was just so nice because I could, I didn't have to buy much meat from the store. It makes a real big difference on your budget, up here, at least when you're able to harvest all of this protein. So
Oh, I'm sure the food prices are probably higher up there, I'm assuming, right? Like good amount higher.
they are. Inflation keeps going up, but up here it is way higher than I've lived in the lower 48 before, which brings me to we both lived in New York for a time. We weren't even that far from each other. So
Yeah, that's right.
that's
Yeah, I was actually in Syracuse. You were somewhere in
okay.
Western New York, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was outside of Buffalo over by Batavia kind of. So probably what, hour and a half away from where you were, a couple hours.
Yeah, probably like 2 hours. Yeah, not that far. It's kind of the same general area. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I loved it there. Yeah, lots of hunting and fishing. It was great. So, I
Yep.
knew I need to get a bug out bag. That is one thing that I have not done. So I might pick your brain about that.
Hmm.
I think I'm pretty good on collecting water and food, just because the whole pandemic thing. I stocked up on some of that. Obviously, I've got ammo and ammo cans and my AR and my AK, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, but for me, prepping, a lot of prepping is just I've got my battle belt. So I've got my Glock 19 that with a surefire light that fits into my holster, then my whole battle belt with a bunch of mags. I've got my plate carrier chest with the plate carrier with ceramic
Yep.
plates in it, bunch of
Hmm.
mags on that. And then I've had a lot of fun with this night vision stuff. So I got a PVS 14 night vision set up, and I've got you know, the correct EOTech to work with that with the riser, and I've got the IR laser, and now I have a laser on the Glock too. And that stuff is I don't know how useful really it would be, but it is pretty fun to mess around with it and train with it. So, and then I do have three or four medical kits, and one of them I'll put on my battle belt. But I do need to put some of this stuff together into a backpack. What would you suggest I do for my bug out bag? What are the essentials for a bug out bag?
I mean, it's kind of generally accepted that you definitely want to have the 5 C's. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, the five
Mhm.
C's of survival. It's pioneered by a guy called Dave Canterbury. He was on the Dual Survival show on Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And it's basically it's an acronym. It's container, cordage, cutting tool, combustion device, and cover. So you have a container, which is like usually like a stainless steel canteen to boil water in, to cook stuff
Okay.
in. That's like essential. You need some kind of preferably like a steel container, titanium, aluminum, something you could boil water in. And
Hmm.
then you have cordage, paracord or bank line, which you can use for multiple different things. Then you have a cutting tool, which would be a knife. I mean, you could do so many things with a knife. And then you
Hmm.
have cover would be like a military poncho. And the
Okay.
ponchos are great because you could use it as a tarp, but you could also use it as a poncho. You can make a shelter out of it. You could use it to collect water. You could use it for camouflage if it's like a camouflage poncho. And then you have combustion. Combustion is like a ferrocerium rod, like a fire
Yep.
starting rod. Those are preferable over like lighters and matches because as long as you have something to strike it with, no matter the conditions outside, it's always going to throw a spark. So as long as you have something that'll catch that spark and it'll ignite, you're basically it's a reliable source of starting a fire. So like the 5 C's is always like a fundamental thing. So you want to have a canteen, a hank of paracord, maybe like a 50-foot hank. That's what I have in my but all my bug out bags. I have a 1 liter stainless steel canteen, a
Hmm.
50-foot hank of paracord, and I usually get like the paracords that have they have like a separate like wick inside that so you can like cut the paracord and you can pull out like a separate strand that's like waxed like it's like a waxed nylon or something, and you can burn
Nice.
that and start a fire with it. So I'll have that, and then I'll have some kind of knife, a good first cerium rod, but like I don't like the small ones because like The really small ones, it's hard to get a good spark going, and I'm sure you probably know, being in Alaska,
Yeah.
it's very wet and snowy. You wanna have a nice
Mhm.
big spark, so I have, like, a larger ferro rod that's like, like the half-inch thick ones, and then I have, just, like, a camouflage poncho, either, like, for the summer, like a woodland camo, and then for,
Mhm.
like, the fall, I'll have, like, a mossy oak camo poncho, and other stuff you can put in there is a good one to put in there, like contractor bags from like if you go to Home Depot, those like heavy duty garbage bags. You could
Okay.
use those so many different things. If we're talking like bugging out, you can collect firewood with it. You could make a sleeping bag out of it by stuffing it with leaves and laying inside of that. You can collect
Mhm.
water. I mean, there's just a million things you can do with that. I mean, there's so many things. Obviously, some kind of self-defense, like a handgun with some spare reloads,
Mhm.
that's definitely critical. I like to have, I actually have a waterproof map of the entire lower 48 and also a waterproof map of the Northeast. So if
Okay.
for whatever reason I have to travel outside of my immediate area, if the power is down, I'm not going to be able to go on my phone on Google Maps and search, what the highways are like and stuff. You need a paper map. So, paper maps are essential in my opinion. Compass, good quality compass. What else? Water purification tablets. Because with the water filters, one thing you should keep in mind is a lot of people don't know is that the water filters can actually freeze, because it's just
Uh,
a membrane in there. So if you
right.
keep that in your bug out bag in the winter, you forget to take it out, it'll break, so you need to remember that and have other things you can use to treat, water rather than just a filter. You don't want to rely on a filter. So I have purification tablets for that. You can go as far as carrying like a gas mask with a spare filter. That's
Okay.
going to start to add more weight though, and then you got to worry about like a seal. You have to have a good seal around your face. Like if you have a beard like me, you're not going to
Mhm.
get a seal. But some guys will have that. I always have some good quality glasses, like um, because you just don't know what time of year it is. What if you're, let's say, like for you in Alaska, it's very snowy, and if you have to bug out when it's like sunny, I'm sure you're aware of like snow blindness, right? So
Yeah.
um, if you're out there for a couple of days and you don't have something like sunglasses, I mean, it's those simple little things like that can really make a big difference. Um, I mean, I could just keep going on and on, but that I also keep like obviously I keep like a little thing of like face paint for camouflaging my face and like a face mask if
Mhm.
it's a situation where I have to, camo myself if there's, some threats out there. I want to have
Right.
that ability to cover up, my pale white skin. um,
Mhm.
so that's just kind of like, the beginning. That's like what I like to keep in there. I mean, I could go on and on for a while, but
That's great because I have all of those things just for my from my camping and hunting and that kind of stuff. So all I
Mhm.
need to really do is get a backpack. I'm going to try to do that soon and I'll just put one together because I think that's essential. It feels good just to know you have that all in a pack ready to go.
Yeah.
What do you think about the bugging in versus bugging out? Because I hear a lot of people say, well, you should, natural disaster, some kind of collapse happens, you should just stay put and get with your neighbors and kind of protect your home area. What do you think of that versus, oh, I need to get out somewhere?
Uh, in my opinion, you should not bug out unless you have a solid plan, like if let's
Yeah.
say, like, for example, you and Chuck, like if you know for sure Chuck, if you've talked with Chuck about it and you guys are on the same page, like you don't want to just show up at his house and he's going to be like, no, I don't want you here.
Right.
If
You
you
didn't
have like
bring rice, go away.
right, yeah, yeah, or whatever, yeah. So you want to make sure your secondary location is solid. It's a good shelter. You have a way of heating it or You know, there has to be resources nearby, you know, water and stuff. You don't want to just like bug out, you know, and have no plan, you know, nowhere to go, just kind of wandering around. That's kind of a bad situation to be in. Obviously, if you know, if you don't have a plan, you know, you don't have a secondary location, but you may still have to bug out because there might be something that threatens your safety, right? Like if let's say, you
Right.
know, in your area, you guys probably have earthquakes or volcanoes, right? So, you know, if
Big
let's
time
say like
earthquake.
you have like a huge earthquake and you know your house collapses, I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to stay there anymore. So in that situation, you have to go somewhere. But generally
Mhm.
speaking, I think a lot of preppers will agree with me that you should stay put as long as possible,
Okay.
unless you live in like a what I call a danger zone. Like if you live in like a big city, like a mega city, like New York City, Chicago, LA,
Mhm.
you know, in that situation, you should try to leave, you know, as soon as
Yeah.
possible. But
Do you like zombie shows?
oh yeah, for sure. I've seen all kinds. Yeah.
That new Last of Us is pretty good. They based it off that zombie video game. They're doing a good job on it, but I always think of like, shit hit the fan scenarios with Walking Dead or these zombie shows, and it's just kind of interesting to see what the characters do.
Yeah, yeah, that's I've heard that's a good one. I gotta check that out. Yeah, I've seen all kinds of post-apocalyptic stuff. I love it.
Right. Yeah, I would not want to be in New York City when stuff collapses. I have this overland setup. So I got a lifted Toyota, and then I've got a pop-up thing. I go on these camping trips in this truck, and I can
Mhm.
just go anywhere. I need a winch, and I that's one thing I need, but I got big tires and a lift. I can get around with this clearance. So if something happens, I can get around stuff in the roads, go on back roads, trying to get out to Chuck's. But I can also pop up this rooftop tent, and I've got a really comfortable bed up there with memory foam. What do you think about? Have you thought about things like that as far as prepping?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's a great thing to have. I think everybody should have that if they can afford something like that.
Mhm.
Definitely, you know, because it basically gives you like a house on wheels essentially, and
Yeah,
you,
for sure.
and then you have your, you know, lifted truck. So I mean, you can pretty much go anywhere unless it's like some crazy, you know, but like
Yeah.
any pretty much any back road, any dirt road, you can just drive down it for miles, get away from civilization and just park and set up camp. That's definitely a good option. I would just make sure you have space to put like food, you know, like if you have
Mhm.
your rice or your freeze dried food, you know, that's going to take up a little space in your truck. So make sure you just have enough
Okay.
room for that, you know, because you're going to need it. If you're going to stay there a few weeks, you know, you don't want to just live off the land, you know. Which I'm
Yeah,
sure
it's
you
funny you
probably did.
mentioned. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the earthquake. We had a huge one, almost 3 years ago, and I was actually in New York
Oh, wow.
hunting deer at the time. I got my first whitetail there, and thankfully I missed it. I came back and like crap had fallen off the walls, and luckily our house didn't get damaged, but some houses were almost cracked in half with huge things in the. I mean, there was a lot of damage, but it was a huge earthquake, so that's a danger here. But I know Chuck is all doom and gloom. He for 5 years he's been telling me, "Oh, the economic collapse is next year," and so but and I've always kind of blown that off. I'm more of a positive person, but now I'm, with inflation the way it's going and things that the whole crypto thing crashing and every wars going on.
Yep.
Now I think that that could be a possibility. What is your opinion, nationwide, worldwide, on impending doom, a collapse? What do you think is the odds of something major?
I think it's probably the highest now that it's ever been in my
Yeah.
lifetime, I know, and I don't know, you know, how old you are, but, you're
Mhm.
probably around the same age as me, I would imagine, and probably in our lifetimes, I would say it's, pretty bad if you look at it the big picture. I mean, you know, the wars just all over, everything's just popping off everywhere. It's like,
Mhm.
they're talking about Israel might attack Iran because of their nuclear facilities. If that happens, that's gonna, I mean, with the oil prices are just gonna go crazy if that happens, and China
I
maybe
read
going
that.
after.
Yeah, I read that Iran's making a drone army, and
Oh,
then once
really?
that's prepared, yeah, I mean, once that's prepared, they're just going to have like thousands of drones flying right to Israel with bombs.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
it's crazy. Yeah,
but it
I mean,
it can't hurt to be prepared. I mean, and that's I'm going to actively come up with some lists, and I'll probably pick your brain some more, and we'll
hmm
do some more of these videos. But I want my bug
hmm
out bag. I think I'm doing pretty good as far as food and weapons and ammunition, but there's probably some things I could do a lot better at. So I
hmm
really appreciate you joining me. And I forgot to remind everybody, I'll have a link in the beginning of the video, but please check out New York Prepper on YouTube and subscribe to him. He does a lot of cool videos on this subject matter. So thanks for joining me, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time. Thanks.
My name is Chuke. I like to trade my guns just for fun, but now I have none. Oh, look, getting shot by a bear, but I don't care. I got a 10mm. Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Watch you all die every